Your attorney has spent $50,000 to prosecute your medical malpractice case. At the very end of the case, if he is successful in obtaining money as a form of compensation for all of the harms, losses, and damages that you incurred, will the attorney get that money repaid to him and his law firm? Would you like to know the answer? Come join me for a walk along the beach as I share with you the answer to that question. If your attorney lays out $50,000 to prosecute your case, will he get repaid all that money if he's successful for you? The answer is, yes, he will. Now, you might be thinking, wait a second. First of all, how can he rack up $50,000 in expenses prosecuting my case? I'll tell you how. In a medical malpractice case, these cases tend to be very expensive. And you see, when you first go to an attorney in New York, you don't have to lay out a dime in order to hire the best lawyer you can find to represent you, to go ahead and prosecute your case, to go ahead and take your case from the very beginning, to have it reviewed by a medical expert, all the way through discovery, all the way to trial. That process can take 2 to 3 years, if not more. So now, during that entire time, the attorney receives nothing from you. You have not paid a dime out of your own pocket in order to have this case brought by the best lawyer you could find. This lawyer is laying out every single penny for your case out of his own pocket. He's taking that money from his own law firm to pay for expenses in order to prosecute your case. Now, why would he do that? I'll tell you why he'd do that. He'd do that because he believes in your case. He'd do that because he has a medical expert or multiple medical experts who believe in your case, that you have a valid basis for a case. The attorney will only take on a case if he knows that your injuries are significant. He's only going to invest in your case if he reasonably believes, based upon his medical experts, that the doctors, that the hospitals were careless and caused you harm, and that your harm is significant and or permanent. And he's only going to take on your case if he believes he can get you a substantial amount of money as compensation for all of your injuries. Otherwise, it becomes senseless from a business standpoint to take on a case that he knows he cannot recoup his money, he cannot recoup his time, he cannot recoup anything. Now, obviously, there is never a guarantee. Anytime you go to an attorney and he tells you, yes, you have a good case, even with a great expert, even if he tells you, yes, you have a great case, even if you have a wonderful case, there is no guarantee that taking this case all the way to trial that you're going to win. And there is no attorney anywhere, I don't care how great they are, who could ever make such a promise. Nobody can ever tell you what the outcome will be when your case goes to trial. Why is that? It's because we simply don't know. We don't know whether or not you'll be successful. The defense doesn't know whether or not we will be successful or whether they will be successful. However, it's all a risk. It's a risk that we take, it's a risk that the defense takes in deciding whether or not to go to trial. One of the big risks that a plaintiff's attorney, an attorney who you now hire to represent you in your particular malpractice matter, is whether or not we are ever going to recoup the money that we paid out. That's a huge loss if you lose the case. If the attorney has spent $50,000 to prosecute your case and he loses it, guess what? He doesn't get that money repaid. He doesn't get paid for his time. Nothing. All of that time, effort, energy, and all those lost resources are gone. The goal here is, rather than you having to hire the best attorney you can and pay an hourly retainer to an attorney to represent you in a medical malpractice case, now you go ahead, let's say you go ahead on an hourly retainer and pay the attorney X thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars from start all the way through trial. All those years of work and effort where the attorney gets paid an hourly fee. If you are successful and go to a jury and a jury gives you a substantial verdict, yes, that verdict is all yours. There is no fee that will be paid to the attorney at that point. However, most people don't have the ability to pay an excellent attorney an hourly fee to represent them in these medical malpractice cases. So what happens then? What happens then is that our system allows these injured patients, these injured victims, to hire the best lawyer that they can possibly find. To say, listen, I'd like you to represent me. You tell me I have a great case. You tell me we have medical experts who support the fact that I have a great case. So now let's go forward. And the attorney says, fine, I'll be happy to go forward. I will invest in you and your case. I will put forth as much money as needed for medical experts, for depositions, for court transcripts, for investigation, for obtaining medical records, and everything that is necessary to go ahead and prosecute your case. And yes, that can reach easily $50,000 in a medical malpractice case in New York. In fact, oftentimes those expenses are much, much more. It's not unusual to see medical expenses of $100,000, $150,000. So yes, if you and your attorney are successful in obtaining money for all of the harms and losses and damages you incurred, yes, the very first thing that will happen when you receive your check is that the attorney's expenses will be repaid to him and his law firm. That's for the fact that he has now taken all this risk throughout all these years, paid out all of this money that he could have been using elsewhere. He could have invested that money elsewhere. He could have invested in the stock market. He could have put it into a mutual fund. He could have done a lot of things with it, but instead he chose to invest in you and your particular case. Why? Hoping and expecting that he would get a good return on his investment. And if you are successful, yes, the very first thing that happens is the attorney and his law firm get paid all of those expenses. And then the attorney's fee is calculated. And why is that done? It's because you didn't have to pay out a dime throughout the entire duration of this case. Alternatively, if you had the means, if you had the money, the resources to hire the best attorney possible, and you paid them an hourly fee for all those years of work, and you paid for all the expenses along the way, then guess what? You wouldn't have to pay all those expenses at the very end of the case. You wouldn't have to give or share the amount you received and recovered as compensation with the attorney, because you will have agreed prior to and at the beginning of your case that you would pay him an hourly fee that the attorney agreed to. This is what's known as a contingency fee, which bottom line, it means the attorney only gets paid if he is successful in getting money for you. That's it. If he's not successful, he loses everything. He loses his time, his investment, his money, his resources, and he gets absolutely nothing. On the other hand, if he is successful and he's able to get you money, yes, he does get repaid all of the expenses that he paid on your behalf. So why do I share this with you? I share this with you to open your eyes, to help you understand exactly what goes on in these medical malpractice cases in New York. Hopefully this gives you an understanding that as you're trying to decide whether or not to go ahead and bring a lawsuit on your behalf because of something that a doctor or a hospital did wrong, now you'll have a better understanding of what really happens in these cases in New York. You know, I recognize you likely have questions or concerns about your own matter. Well, if your matter did happen in New York and you have not yet started a lawsuit, but are thinking of doing so, and still have questions that need to be answered, what I invite you to do is pick up the phone and call me. You know, I answer questions like yours every single day, and I'd love to chat with you. You can reach me at 516-487-8207 or by email at Gerry, Gerry, at Oginski-law.com. That's it for today's video. I'm Gerry Oginski. Have a fantastic day.